Hey guys, Mr. Studebaker here. Got the V-twin up on the cherry picker. Sergeant Pepper's on the deck. Fixing to drop the motor in, check on the Driveshaft fit, and show you something that's been found out. Earlier, I noticed that this was on an angle as far as the drive line goes. And these bolts down here were drilled on an angle. And I was like, well, why is that on an angle? And it never dawned on me until I saw this. The angle is so that they can put this motor in. See the angle on the plate? That pretty much matches the angle that I saw when I had the protractor on it. And I'm thinking, that's going to bolt in nicely. I'll have to put the clutch in there, and I think the lineups are going to be great. But I had an idea earlier today about this lever. This is the old hydrostat lever. So, you know, before that was reverse, and that's way forward fast. I was like, well, you know what? Since I've already got the fast on there, why don't I just do something like this, where this goes to choke, this goes to idle, and then this goes to medium idle, and then full blast. I'm thinking that might be pretty cool. I wonder if it can happen. What might help this happen is there's the lever that actuates it. I'm thinking there's enough stroke in there to make something happen. All the while, making sure that this go faster pedal will work too at the same time. I'm thinking this is going to be pretty sweet. And I did a mock-up for the clutch assembly on the donor. And what I found out with the donor is that the clutch is going to hit the steering arm. So while I'm in here messing around with this thing on Sergeant Pepper with the constant velocity joint that's up here, I can move this anywhere I want. I can move it, I can move the angle so it's like this, or I can twist it. So the nut will clear this guy. I have room at my disposal down here of about 1 inch before it hits the solid part of the frame. But then that's even open too, because you can easily go in there and cut it. Now this piece that my finger's on is part of the underguarding, which is real thin steel. It bends really easy. You can see it bending. Thinking that might be the cat's ass having all that in there. Oh, so there's a few things that's going on inside the garage. Let's go check it out. So making room to put Sergeant Pepper in here so the real fun can begin. And the real fun that's going to begin is this stuff. New parts. 2-barrel intake. 1x2 bearings. Porting of the intake, which GoPros don't do a very good job showing all this. So I'm going to switch over to my other camera and get a better view. The beauty of this guy is he's supposed to make 60 horsepower in a ported form. Well, it just so happens I know how to port and do those types of things. And I've already started a little bit just to show that there's a lip on this thing. And that lip is right in here. You can look closely at it. I'll put a light on there for you. There you go. So, this lip right here matches the head. Now when I grind that down further, it won't match the head anymore, so I'll have to do work on the head. But the head needs lots of work. I have some 25 horse heads in here, and they don't look too well. It might be an easy port job for those. But I don't have a 2-barrel carburetor to fit on this. But what I do have is this. A Rochester single-barrel old military carburetor. I've torn it apart. It is all set to run any kind of fuel you want to run through it. It's got a main jet on there. It's basically a glorified Walbro, maybe, if you want to say it, because it has a main jet on the bottom, but it's all set up way better than a Walbro. And it's big. Look at the hole on this thing. It's massive. It's massive. I have calipers here so we can measure, so I can show you how big it is. It is 1.8 inches. The venturi on the inside is about 1 inch, from what I can gather. Which I don't think it'll make much of a difference because it is a venturi. It is a small little piece. I've looked in on the web to find out exactly what Venturis do as far as restrictions go. Yeah, there's not much information out there, and from what I gather, it's not a severe restriction. And this is the output side where the butterfly sits, and that guy is roughly 1 7/16. That's a big boy. So what's going to happen is it's going to sit like this. I have to do modifications to it, and then I have to make a piece of aluminum that'll cover up these two holes and turn it into one hole. And that's going to be slick. Little 2-barrel to 1-barrel conversion. That motor ought to be sick with that guy in there. 1x2 bearings. This is an OEM version, which you can no longer find or locate. You have to get them off a parts tractor. Very heavy duty bearings. I've had these on Kaiser for a couple years now, just beating on it. And they're now beginning to show a little bit of age. So I went out and been sourcing. I picked up some of these from McMaster Car, which 2 months later they're not doing so good. But I found this guy. This is an HD switch. This is the maker of this. There's the name. HD switch. It looks like it's a pretty cool bearing. It's precision ground, so there's a little more precision in this versus this one. This one has a metal shield, and on the inside of the metal shield is a little rubber seal. I don't think the little rubber seal is going to make much of a difference because of the way they load the bearings in on this. In order to get the balls in, they had to grind a hollow here and a hollow there, and then they load all 17 balls in for the full complement. Otherwise, they won't be able to get them all in there. So water is going to be able to get right in there, no problem. But you got to grease them all the time anyway, because water goes everywhere. Things get hot, air leaks, the air sucks back in, and the water follows. Or when you're moving around and wiggling, because these do move and allow the water in. So continuous greasing is kind of like what I like to do. It keeps the water out. And if the grease is clean, it means there's no dirt too. Well, those will go on Kaiser in a couple days, and we'll see how those go. Now that that's done, let's go drop the motor in. See how the drive line hooks up. Well, this is pretty easy to put in. I think I can put it in by one hand. So we'll take a little weight off. Drop her down, see where it goes. Weight's off, mostly. So the biggest thing about putting this in is there's a notch in the base plate right here. That notch is clearance for this bolt right here. And there's one on the other side too. And you gotta be careful when you load those in because they'll get jammed in there and you won't be able to get it out. It'll cause all kinds of grief for you. Oh, more weight's been applied. Make sure it's clear in the nut. Could be clear. Mostly clear. Weight's off. Now we'll just nudge her forward back a little bit. Let's see. Look at there's daylight in the holes. See the daylight? That's the spot where it goes. Okay, so this is looking pretty good. My shroud alignment looks a little tight. That might have to be replaced, or I grind some off of that. As far as the shroud goes, there is this little bracket that holds the shroud on. There is some gap in between there. And I'll play with it and see how it works out. I thought about the shroud, leaving it off. And I got to thinking about this. With that way that canopy is all the way around this, it's sealed up pretty good. And when the hot air is blowing out of here, there's a good chance that'll circle back around and going through the motor. And I'd rather have cold air going through the motor than hot motor air. Excuse me. So I'm gonna do my best to put the shroud in. Dry shaft time, and I hope this is long enough. About ready to find out. Oh, I'm thinking it is. I won't be able to put it in there. So that's about There's going to be plenty of material in there to play with, and this is just off the pinion, which is roughly where it's going to be when all is said and done. So it looks like my drive shaft is going to be long enough. The next steps on this whole thing is to move Sgt. Pepper into the garage and let the real fun begin. All this boring stuff has got to stop. I like this excitement of building a motor, building a drivetrain, and putting the fats on. Now, I've got a decision here. I can put super wide fats on, or I can put those back on. The super wide fats aren't quite on this yet. You'll see them in a little bit because I'm going to pull them up, put them on. I'm not going to do that today. I'm just going to wheel him into the garage. So I got most of the thinking done on what's happening here. So I'll see you on the turn, Mr. Studebaker. Out.